She was chained to a warship's hull until a human Kelia had always been a warrior. Strong, quick, and skilled in combat, she had earned her place among the elite of her people. But that was before her capture. Now chained to the hull of a Verse warship, she was nothing more than a symbol of the enemy's dominance over the galaxy. Her arms, bound by chains made of the strongest metal, were locked tight against the cold, smooth surface of the ship. The chains were meant to break her, to remind every soul who saw her of the absolute power the Verse held. But Kelia's spirit remained unyielding. The Verse were a ruthless race, feared across the stars for their military strength. They conquered, enslaved, and destroyed without hesitation. Their ships, dark and imposing, loomed over the galaxy, striking terror in every species they encountered. Kelia had once been a fierce fighter against them, leading her people's battles to defend their world. But now she was a prisoner, a pawn on display. She had been captured during a skirmish, a final confrontation between her people and the Verse. The battle was supposed to be one of many, a clash between two powerful forces. But the Verse had outsmarted her and her forces were scattered. They had surrounded her, and before she knew it, she had been captured. They dragged her onto their warship, shackled her to its hull, and left her there to rot, a warning to others. At first, Kelia had struggled. She fought against the chains, but they were too strong. She screamed, cursed at her captors, but all in vain. The Verse had ensured that her strength would not save her this time. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Kelia began to lose track of time. The stars above her were her only company. At night, when the warship drifted through the emptiness of space, she would look up at them, remembering the freedom she once had. It seemed like a dream now, a distant memory of a time before she was chained. She had been placed in this position for a reason. The Verse wanted her to feel the weight of their power to break her spirit. They wanted her to know that no one could escape their wrath. They believed that the chains would defeat her, that she would eventually beg for mercy. But Kelia had no intention of giving them that satisfaction. Her pride, her defiance, and her will to survive kept her strong. As days passed, she became more accustomed to her new life. Her body ached from the constant strain, and her skin, once smooth and strong, began to show the marks of her captivity. But her resolve never wavered. She refused to allow them to break her. She would escape. She had to. Her captors rarely came near her, only checking in to ensure the chains remained secure. They would laugh at her from afar, taunting her in their harsh, alien language. She couldn't understand everything they said, but the mocking tone was clear enough. It was always the same. You are nothing, you are weak, you will die here, chained to this ship. But their words had no effect. Kelia's mind was made up. She would not die here. She would find a way to escape, to strike back at them, to take back her freedom. And then one day, something changed. A new ship appeared on the horizon, something Kelia had never seen before. The human fleet. The Verse had been at war with humans for years, but their presence here was unexpected. Humans were known for their resourcefulness and bravery, but they were a young race, not yet fully formed in their place in the galaxy. Kelia had heard stories of their struggles, their determination, and their fierce will to survive. As the human ships drew closer, Kelia felt a stir within her. Could this be the opportunity she had been waiting for? Could they be the key to her freedom? She had no way of knowing, but the idea of being rescued by these humans filled her with both hope and fear. The warship Kelia was chained to had been on a patrol mission when the human fleet entered Verse territory. The humans were bold, daring to venture into a place that no one else dared. The Verse, enraged by the audacity of the humans, prepared for battle. But in that moment, as the Verse warship turned to engage the humans, Kelia saw something that changed everything. There, among the chaos of the impending battle, a human ship came into view. Its sleek, angular shape was unlike anything Kelia had seen before. It moved with precision, gliding through space with an agility that was almost graceful. Kelia's heart skipped a beat. The ship was coming closer, and it seemed to be heading straight for her. As the human ship approached, the Verse warship began to shift its course, readying itself for combat. But the human ship didn't retreat. Instead, it came closer, its engines humming with power. The tension in the air was palpable. Kelia's mind raced. Was this the moment? Was this the chance for her escape? Through the noise of the battle, Kelia caught sight of something, a figure standing at the front of the human ship, looking up at her. It was a man, his face determined, his eyes filled with purpose. His presence radiated something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Kellia had been a prisoner for so long that the feeling of hope was foreign to her. She had long given up on the idea of being rescued, on the idea that someone would come to free her. But this human, this stranger, seemed to care. For the first time in months, Kellia felt a glimmer of something she hadn't allowed herself to believe in. The human ship came to a halt just below her. And then a voice echoed through the ship's communication system, reaching Kellia's ears. It was a calm, steady voice, but there was something powerful about it. "We're here to get you," the man said. "Hold on, help is coming." Kellia's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe it. She had waited for so long, and now someone was actually coming to save her. She strained against the chains, her body screaming in pain, but her heart was filled with a sense of relief. She was no longer alone. There was hope. The man's voice came through again, louder this time. "We're going to break those chains. Hang on, Kellia, you're not alone anymore." Kellia's breath caught in her throat. How did he know her name? How did he know who she was? It didn't matter. All that mattered was that someone was coming to save her. As the human ship's engines powered down, Kellia's heart pounded in her chest. The chains that had held her for so long, could they really be broken? Could this human, this strange, unexpected ally, really be the one to set her free? For the first time in months, Kellia allowed herself to believe in the possibility of escape. Aiden stood at the command center of the human ship, staring at the screen that showed Kellia's form, still chained to the hull of the Verse warship. His fingers were tight on the controls, and his heart beat faster with every passing second. This wasn't just a rescue mission, it felt personal. He had seen countless battles, countless horrors, but this was different. The alien woman before him, held captive in such a brutal and humiliating way, sparked something deep inside him, something that demanded action. "We're coming for you," he murmured under his breath, his words barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. He couldn't afford to waste time. The Verse ship was still moving, still preparing for combat. The entire fleet was locked in a battle. Yet Kellia's situation, her unyielding strength despite the chains, was what mattered most. He wasn't about to let her suffer any longer. The first thing Aiden had to do was disable the Verse warship's outer defenses. As part of the human fleet's plan to engage the Verse, this mission was risky. He had not been briefed on Kellia's full story, but from what he had gathered, she was a symbol of power, captured by the Verse, left to rot as a trophy. But what struck Aiden more than anything was her resilience, the way she looked up at him from the hull, as if waiting. It was almost as if she trusted him without ever meeting him. It was a strange feeling, one that weighed heavily on his shoulders. Aiden gave the order to begin disabling the outer defenses of the warship. His crew worked quickly, typing commands into the consoles, initiating the necessary steps to get Kellia down. They were close now, so close that he could feel the tension in the air. "We have to move fast," Aiden said to his first officer, a tall woman named Erica, whose sharp eyes always seemed to miss nothing. "Once we get her, we'll need to get out of here before the Verse retaliate." Erica nodded. "Understood, Captain, we'll be ready." The human ship slowly approached the warship, moving with precision and care. The engines hummed softly, barely noticeable to those on board. To Kellia, it might have felt like just another day, another battle. But to Aiden, this was a defining moment. He had never thought much of his place in the galaxy, never really saw himself as more than just a soldier. But now, standing on the brink of this mission, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. For the first time in a long while, he had a purpose beyond fighting. As the ship inched closer to the Verse vessel, Aiden knew he couldn't let anything go wrong. He needed to get Kellia down from the hull, and he needed to do it quickly. The chains holding her were heavy, reinforced by Verse technology that made them almost impossible to break. But Aiden had studied the ship systems and found a weak point, a gap in their external armor where he could access a panel. He hoped it would be enough. The human crew prepared the equipment for the next phase. A special grappling tool was ready to launch. They would send it to Kellia, attach it to the hull, and then use it to draw her back into the ship. It was a complicated procedure, but Aiden had no other choice. If they didn't act now, they would lose her, and if they lost her, they would lose their only chance at stopping the Verse. As the grappling tool activated, Kellia felt the strange shift in the air around her. She had been chained to the hull for so long that time itself felt like a distant memory. But now, something was different. There was a change in the atmosphere, a shift in the energy around her. She looked up, her eyes narrowing as she saw a ship drawing closer, a human ship. Her instincts screamed at her to prepare for another attack, but something stopped her. This ship wasn't like the others. It wasn't like the Verse, who had only ever come to dominate, to break her. This one, this human ship, was different. Kellia felt a flicker of something unfamiliar: hope. The grappling tool reached out and latched onto the hull, its mechanical arms securing themselves tightly. Kellia's breath caught in her throat as the ropes began to tighten. She felt herself being pulled toward the ship, toward freedom. For a moment she hesitated. Could she trust this human? Could she trust anyone after everything the Verse had done to her? But then she remembered why she had been fighting all along. It wasn't just for survival. It was for the freedom of her people, for the strength to stand tall against any force that tried to break them. This was a chance, an opportunity to escape the chains that had bound her for so long. And for the first time in months, Kellia allowed herself to believe in something else: freedom. As she was pulled toward the human ship, Kellia's eyes met the human figure standing at the front. The captain, Aiden Chase, was a tall man, his features hardened by years of battle but softened by something deeper: a conviction, a belief in something greater than himself. There was something raw and honest in his gaze. It made Kellia pause. The chains rattled as they loosened, the tension of captivity slowly fading as she was drawn closer to safety. Kellia's body, weakened by months of neglect, felt like it had to relearn how to move. She couldn't believe this was happening. Her mind struggled to keep up with the reality of the moment. As she was pulled into the human ship, a sense of weightlessness overcame her. She was no longer shackled to the Verse warship. She was free. Aiden reached out a hand to help her aboard. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of all the years of struggle behind it. "We're getting you out of here," he said, his voice soft yet firm. Kellia took his hand, the grip of a warrior still evident in her touch. "Why?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the days of silence. Aiden helped her onto the deck, his eyes never leaving her. "Because no one should be treated like that," he said simply. "No one deserves to be chained up like an animal." Kellia looked at him in silence, unsure of what to say. She had never been rescued before, never been shown kindness by someone outside her own people. She had always fought alone, stood alone. This human Aiden had done what no one else ever had. He had freed her. But she couldn't allow herself to trust so easily. She had learned the hard way that nothing in the galaxy was ever truly free. The Verse would be coming for her soon enough. They always did. And when they did, she would be ready. Aiden turned to his crew, giving the order to prepare for the next phase of their plan. "We've got her," he said, "but we're not done yet. We need to get out of Verse territory before they retaliate." Kellia stood by his side, still unsure of what the future held. But for the first time in months, she felt something she had long forgotten: a spark of hope. Aiden's ship, now carrying Kellia, glided smoothly through the cold, empty void of space. The tension in the air was palpable, not just among the crew, but also between Kellia and Aiden. She stood near the window, staring out at the stars, her eyes dark and unreadable. The vast emptiness of space seemed to reflect the emptiness she had felt during her captivity. She had been a prisoner for so long, chained to the Verse warship as they paraded her like some kind of trophy. Her heart still beat with the sting of her past, but now there was a strange sense of something new, something unfamiliar: freedom. Aiden had given her that, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to accept it yet. Aiden, on the other hand, felt a growing sense of responsibility for Kellia. He had freed her from the chains, and now she was his responsibility. He didn't know her past, and she hadn't told him much, but it didn't matter. The look in her eyes when she first met his gaze was enough to tell him that she was a warrior, someone who had seen things, done things, and had suffered things no one should ever have to endure. He had seen that same fire in the eyes of countless soldiers, but Kellia's was different. It was a fire that had been extinguished by pain, but it was still there, smoldering beneath the surface. He sat in his captain's chair, watching the quiet hum of the ship's controls. His mind was occupied with thoughts of what they were up against. The Verse were ruthless, and they wouldn't take lightly the loss of their prize. He knew they would be coming after them soon. The ship's sensors had already picked up signs of the Verse fleet closing in on their position. "We need to move fast," Aiden said, his voice steady. "We're not safe yet. The Verse will track us. I want everyone ready for anything." His first officer, Erica, nodded, her face set in determination. She had been with Aiden through many battles, but even she knew that the Verse were a force to be reckoned with. "I'll get the crew in position," she said, turning to relay the orders. Aiden glanced at Kelia, who was still standing by the window, lost in thought. He stood up from his chair and approached her slowly. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, trying to gauge her mood. Kelia didn't immediately respond. She was still processing everything. She had been freed, yes, but that didn't mean she was free of the past. It was hard to just leave behind everything she had known. Her people, her home, and everything she had fought for. She had lost so much, and she wasn't sure if she could trust anyone, even this human who had risked everything to save her. "I'm fine," Kelia said finally, her voice quiet but steady. "I've been through worse." Aiden frowned, but he didn't press. He could see that she was trying to shut down her emotions, burying them deep inside. He understood. After all, he had his own demons to deal with. The weight of his responsibilities had always been with him, but seeing Kelia chained and broken like that had left a mark on him. The ship's sensors beeped suddenly, and Aiden turned his attention back to the controls. He knew what that sound meant. The Verse had found them. The display in front of him showed the dark outlines of several enemy ships closing in fast. They were outnumbered, and they wouldn't be able to outrun the Verse. The only option now was to fight. "Get ready," Aiden called out to his crew. "We're not giving them an inch." As the human ship prepared for battle, Kelia felt something stir inside her, a desire to fight. A desire to not just survive, but to strike back. She had been a warrior all her life, and now she had a chance to fight again. But this time it wasn't for her people. This time it was for herself. The Verse had taken everything from her, but now she had a chance to take something back. Without thinking, she walked toward the weapons locker, her eyes scanning the array of tools at her disposal. She hadn't fought with human weapons before, but she was sure she could figure it out. Aiden had saved her life, and now she was going to repay the favor. Aiden watched her for a moment before speaking. "You're not alone in this," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We'll get through this together. You don't need to fight alone anymore." Kelia paused, her fingers brushing the hilt of a blaster rifle. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with something Aiden couldn't quite place. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't trust. It was something more, something deeper. "I've always fought alone," she said, her voice low. "I don't know how to do this any other way." Aiden's gaze softened, and he stepped closer to her. "I know, but that's why you don't have to anymore. You're with us now." Kelia looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time since her capture, she felt something she hadn't expected. A sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. She wasn't alone. She didn't have to fight alone anymore. The ship's alert system blared again, signaling that the Verse were closing in on them. The battle was about to begin. Aiden turned toward the cockpit. "Erica, set course for the asteroid belt. We'll use the debris for cover. Let's show them what we're made of." Erica's voice came through the comms, calm and focused. "Aye, Captain, setting course now." Kelia took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of the weapon in her hands. She had fought countless battles before, but this one felt different. This wasn't just about survival. This was about freedom. The Verse had taken so much from her, but she wasn't going to let them take this away. The human ship began to move, its engines roaring as it surged forward, dodging the incoming fire from the Verse ships. The asteroid belt loomed ahead, a vast field of floating rocks that would provide the perfect cover. The human crew fought with precision, their coordinated efforts a testament to their training and determination. But Kelia wasn't thinking about the battle strategy or the tactics. She was thinking about the Verse, about everything they had done to her, and about everything they were going to pay for. As the human ship weaved through the asteroids, dodging blasts and firing back at the Verse, Kelia stood at the ready. She was ready to fight, ready to reclaim what had been taken from her, ready to show the Verse that they could no longer hold her captive. And for the first time in a long while, Kelia felt the fire of her warrior spirit burning brightly once more. The battle raged on around Aiden and Kelia. The Verse fleet was relentless, closing in on them with terrifying precision. The asteroid belt provided some cover, but it wasn't enough. The Verse ships were powerful, their weapons capable of tearing apart anything in their path. Aiden's ship weaved between the rocks, trying to stay one step ahead, but the enemy was fast, and the pressure was mounting. Aiden gripped the controls tightly, his mind sharp and focused. "We need to take out their lead ship," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "Erica, get us in position. We have to break their formation." "Aye, Captain," Erica replied, her voice steady as she worked the controls, guiding the ship through the narrow gaps between the massive asteroid chunks. "We're closing in. just give me a moment. Kelia stood beside Aiden, her eyes fixed on the view screen as she watched the enemy ships moving in. Her fingers flexed around the handle of the blaster rifle she had taken from the weapons locker. She was ready to fight, but this battle was different from anything she had faced before. This wasn't just about winning or losing, it was about something more personal. The Verse had done this to her. They had broken her, chained her, and paraded her like a prize. They had taken her dignity, her people, and her freedom. Now they would pay. The ship shook as a blast from a Verse ship hit them. The warning lights flickered, and the hull groaned under the strain. Aiden gritted his teeth and slammed his fist on the console. We can't take many more of these hits. We need to disable their weapons. Erica's voice came through again, louder this time, filled with determination. We're in position, Captain. You've got a clear shot. Aiden didn't hesitate. He gave the command, and the ship's weapons fired, sending a powerful blast toward the lead Verse ship. The shot hit its target, causing the ship to shudder and fall out of formation. The Verse vessel was now vulnerable, and Aiden wasn't about to let this chance slip away. He leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the screen. Now, Kelia, he shouted, this is our moment. Kelia's heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted toward the ship's side hatch. She had been waiting for this, preparing for it in her mind the moment she had freed herself from the chains. Now she would have her revenge. She was ready. The hatch opened, and Kelia stepped out onto the ship's exterior. The cool vacuum of space pressed against her, but she barely noticed it. Her focus was entirely on the Verse ship. She had a mission, to take down their weapons. She couldn't allow them to continue their assault. Her boots clicked against the surface as she moved quickly, using the ship's exterior to move with speed and agility. She had been trained to fight in every environment, and space was no different. She reached the weapons array, a set of cannons that could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. She didn't hesitate. She took aim and fired, blasting the cannons apart one by one until the Verse ship's weapons were disabled. The explosions rocked the ship, and Kelia felt the thrill of victory surge through her. She had done it. She had struck back at the enemy who had held her captive for so long, but her work wasn't done. The Verse would regroup, and they would come after her and the humans. She had to make sure they couldn't recover. As Kelia made her way back toward the ship, a burst of energy hit her in the chest. The force of the blast sent her flying across the ship's surface. Her body slammed against the hull with a sickening thud. Pain exploded through her, but she forced herself to keep moving. She had to get back to the ship. She had to help them finish this. Aiden's voice crackled through the comms, full of concern. Kelia, are you all right? Kelia gritted her teeth as she stood up, ignoring the pain that threatened to overwhelm her. I'm fine, she said, her voice strained but determined. I'm coming back. The Verse had made a mistake. They had underestimated her, and now they would pay for it. Kelia pushed herself forward, running across the ship's surface with all the strength she had left. She reached the hatch, her body exhausted but her spirit stronger than ever. She climbed inside, where Aiden and the crew were waiting. You're a hell of a fighter, Aiden said, his voice filled with admiration. Kelia didn't answer at first. She just focused on catching her breath, her eyes never leaving the view screen. The battle was far from over, but she had dealt the Verse a serious blow. She had taken out their weapons, and now they were on the defensive. Erica's voice came through, her tone full of urgency. Captain, the Verse are regrouping. They're coming for us. We need to act fast. Aiden's jaw tightened. We're going to finish this. We've got one shot to take them down for good. Kelia stood beside him, her body still sore from the blast, but her resolve unwavering. Let's do it, she said simply. Let's end this. The crew worked together, their movements precise and coordinated. Aiden's ship was quick and agile, weaving in and out of the asteroid field as they prepared for the final assault. The Verse ships were closing in, but they were weaker now. Their weapons had been disabled, their defenses crippled. It was time to finish what they had started. Aiden gave the command, and the human ship fired one final, powerful shot at the remaining Verse fleet. The explosion lit up the void, sending shockwaves through space. The Verse ships were torn apart, their remains drifting into the emptiness. It was over. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Aiden sat back in his chair, taking a deep breath, his body relaxed after the intense battle. The human crew cheered, but Kelia remained silent. She had won a victory, but it didn't feel like enough. The Verse had taken so much from her, and now they were gone, but there were still other battles to fight, other enemies to face. Aiden turned to her, his eyes full of respect. You did good, Kelia, he said. We couldn't have done it without you." Kellia nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars. "We're not done yet," she said quietly. "There are still others out there who need to be stopped." Aiden smiled, a hint of pride in his expression. "I know, and we'll stop them together." The battle was over, but the war was far from finished, and Kellia knew that she wasn't alone anymore. She had found a new purpose, a new fight. She would continue to fight for the freedom she had longed for, and she would never stop. Not until every enemy who dared to threaten the peace of the galaxy was defeated. Together with Aiden and the humans, Kellia would fight on. The stars above them were vast and endless, but she no longer felt lost in the darkness. She had found her place among them. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a future. The days following the battle were quiet, but the peace was temporary. Aiden and Kellia stood together on the bridge of the human ship, the vastness of space stretching out before them. The ship was now safely away from the Verse territory, but Kellia couldn't shake the feeling that the fight wasn't truly over. She had been freed from the chains that had bound her for so long, but freedom was not something easily accepted. It had taken her years to break free from the control of the Verse, but now, as she stood among the humans, she was faced with a new challenge: trust. The humans had shown her kindness, but she had learned the hard way that kindness didn't always last in a world so full of danger. Aiden had kept his word. He had saved her, helped her escape from the clutches of the Verse, and brought her to a place where she could be free. But what was freedom if it meant constantly running? What was it if the enemies of her people were still out there, waiting, watching? Kellia had never been one to sit idle while others fought. The ship's engines hummed softly as it drifted through space, and Kellia could hear the quiet chatter of the human crew behind her. She turned toward Aiden, who was watching her, his expression serious but kind. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle but with an edge of concern. Kellia didn't know how to answer. She had spent so many years alone, and now, for the first time, she had allies, real allies. But there was still a part of her that feared losing that trust, losing this newfound sense of belonging. "I don't know," Kellia said honestly. "It's hard to believe that it's real. I've been fighting for so long alone, I don't know how to stop." Aiden nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. "I get it. I've been in your shoes before. It's hard to let go of the fight, but sometimes the hardest thing is knowing when to stop, when to let others fight beside you." Kellia turned to look out at the stars again, her thoughts swirling. The Verse were not the only threat in the galaxy. She had seen the way they ruled, through fear and violence, but there were others who still sought to impose their will on the galaxy. And now she was part of something bigger. She was part of the humans' fight, part of a team that believed in something more than just survival. "I don't know if I can let go of the fight," she admitted, her voice soft. "It's all I've ever known. I've lost so much. My people, my home. We all lose things," Aiden said. "But we gain something too. You've already gained your freedom. You've earned the right to live for yourself now, to be more than just a soldier. You're not alone in this fight anymore. And you don't have to carry it all by yourself." Kellia didn't answer right away. She thought about his words, about the life she had lived before, one filled with pain and loss. But there had to be more than that. She had seen a glimpse of what life could be, a life where she didn't have to carry the weight of everything alone. She had always thought of herself as a weapon, a tool to be used for battle. But now she saw the humans, their strength and their unity, their courage and their compassion. They fought, yes, but they fought for something greater than just survival. They fought for the future, for freedom, for justice. And for the first time, Kellia realized that maybe, just maybe, she could be part of that. As the days passed, Kellia began to settle into her new life aboard the ship. She trained with the crew, learning their tactics and their ways of fighting. She worked alongside them, sharing her skills and knowledge, helping them prepare for whatever came next. The humans treated her as an equal, and though it was strange at first, she found herself appreciating the camaraderie that she had long been denied. But even as she grew closer to the crew, there was still a part of her that couldn't fully let go of the past. She had been broken once, and it was hard to forget that. It was hard to believe that she wasn't just a weapon, something to be used until she was no longer needed. One night, as she sat in the ship's mess hall, Kellia found herself lost in thought. She looked around the room at the human crew, laughing and sharing stories. They were a family in their own way, bound together not by blood, but by shared purpose. They were fighting for something they believed in, and they trusted each other. She couldn't help but feel a longing deep inside her, a desire to belong to something like that. Aiden walked in, his usual confident stride interrupted by a slight pause when he saw her sitting alone. He made his way over, his expression softening when he saw the faraway look in her eyes. "You all right?" he asked again, his voice gentle but firm. Kellia looked up at him, her heart heavy with unspoken thoughts. "I don't know how to do this, how to just be. I've always been fighting, always been looking for the next battle." Aiden sat down next to her, his eyes meeting hers. "You don't have to fight alone anymore. And you don't have to keep looking for the next battle. You've already won the biggest one. You're free." Kellia didn't say anything at first. She wasn't sure how to explain the conflict she felt inside. She had been fighting for so long that it was hard to imagine a life without it. But there was something about Aiden's words, something about the way the humans believed in their cause that made her want to try. "I don't know how to stop fighting," she said quietly. "It feels wrong." Aiden looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about stopping the fight, it's about choosing the right battles and choosing who to fight them with." Kellia stared at him for a long moment, his words sinking in. She had always been alone, fighting battles she didn't know how to win. But now she was part of something bigger, something worth fighting for. She had a place in this world. She wasn't just a warrior anymore. She was Kellia, someone who could fight for a cause greater than herself. The days passed, and Kellia slowly began to find peace. She still trained, still fought, but she did it with purpose. She did it for herself, for the future she had yet to fully understand. She learned to trust Aiden and the humans, to believe that they weren't just fighting for survival, but for something more. They were fighting for freedom, for justice, for a better world. Kellia had always been a soldier, but now she was more than that. She was part of a team, part of a family, and together they would face whatever came next. There would always be battles to fight, but Kellia knew now that she didn't have to face them alone. She had found a new purpose, a new way of fighting. And she was ready to face the future, whatever it held. As the ship sailed through the stars, Kellia looked out at the endless expanse before her. She no longer felt lost in the vastness of space. She had a place now, a purpose. She was free. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she could finally breathe.